Okay, so for Breast Cancer Month, we are celebrating or educating with conversations, people in our community about their journey through breast cancer and recovery. So we hope that those who've been diagnosed with breast cancer feel less isolated. We hope that in talking about breast cancer, it becomes more normalized in conversations, and that those of us who have people in our life, clients, family with breast cancer, we feel more helpful, more compassionate, and more informed. So today we have Kia Standard. She is a former musical theater performer who has performed in regional and European productions of West Side Story, Bubbling Brown Sugar, and Don't Stop the Carnival, just to name a few of her credits. Kia was also a strength and fitness trainer for companies like New York Sports Club and Plus One Fitness until she ventured out on her own. Today, she is a freelance writer for theater reviews and op-ed columns for publications like AllAboutSolo.com and Talent in Motion magazine. She's a native of Washington. Yay, me too. Native Washingtonian, and she lived in New York for several years. Me too. But after the pandemic, she has found herself back in her hometown here with us in DC. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Justine. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yay, thank you for being here. And so we are just going to dive right into the questions.
Sounds good.
So, yay, we're going to go back to the beginning. And so how did you get diagnosed? You know, did you suspect anything? Was it just a routine mammogram? And then also, what was the initial diagnosis?
Okay, so I first got diagnosed. I didn't feel anything at all. I had turned 40, about to turn 41, and I just decided I needed to take control of my health. At the time, I was freelancing a lot, so I did not have health care. So I went to Planned Parenthood. And from there was a woman there who said, "Oh, you're almost 41. You should go and get checked. We have we have clinics throughout New York City." I was in New York at the time. And so she sent me to the breast examination center in Harlem. So it seemed like a routine checkup. But then one of the lab assistants seemed a little nervous. She didn't really have a good poker face. She called for someone else, and then they came in as well. And so I was a little nervous. I'm one of those people, worst case scenario, not a hypochondriac really, but then when she was nervous, I became nervous. And it was right before Christmas. And so I was supposed to get, my mailed results, and I chose to have them delivered to New York. I was coming home to DC, but I didn't really want to know the news until after Christmas. So that's pretty much how it started. From there, like I said, I didn't have health insurance, but I did find out once I was diagnosed, there's a center in Harlem. It's called Ralph Lauren Center, after the designer Ralph Lauren, believe it or not. He had a family member, a friend who had cancer. And so it's for people who are underserved. I believe they do prostate cancer as well. So from there, they were able to find patient advocates and all of that type of thing, any kind of support system. So I think the surprise for me was all the support that I really had within the community. Programs that I had no idea about, programs that are free in terms of diagnostics. And so that's pretty much how my journey began.
That's amazing. New York is really good at that, I find.
Yeah.
I also went to Planned Parenthood as a dancer without any health insurance, and they were amazing. So,
so then when I did come back after Christmas, I had to have a needle biopsy. I got the letter saying, yes, there is something abnormal. So from there, I had to go and have a needle biopsy. And my sister accompanied me on that. And the good thing is my sister is a physician. And so I asked if she could come in the room to see the screening. And so she did. And she was quiet about it. I looked to her to see if there was any reaction, and there was no reaction. She just looked at the screen, and then she said, and that's all she said. And then a week later, when I had to call and get the diagnosis from my doctor, she said, and I found out that and I still was in denial because they said positive. I was like, does positive mean I have it? And so as soon as I told her, she said, yeah, I knew. I could tell right away. When I saw the screen, I could tell right away. But she didn't want to upset me. But she was pretty sure that I did have breast cancer. The good thing is, good and bad, is that it was ductal carcinoma. So that, I know that'll be one of your questions. It was ductal carcinoma in situ, which is right in the tissue, the breast tissue. It was pretty much contained in the tissue. So it would have been considered stage 1.
Okay, so it must have been a relief to have your sister Gina there with you.
Very much so, because even as much as the physicians and lab techs and everyone, they explained everything in layman's terms, but I was pretty much numb. And so I just thought it was a death. Like I wasn't even taking it in. I heard cancer and I just heard death. And so I would just turn to my sister and say, I'm going to die. Just tell me I'm going to, I just couldn't really take it in. I wasn't even thinking survival. It was more fight or flight. And I was in flight. I couldn't really take anything in at all. So she was almost like my filter. She would break it down into little tiny bites. And I needed someone to break it down into little tiny bites, especially in the very initial diagnosis. I just really couldn't hear anything, nothing at all.
So I just have to ask, after you went for the initial exam and then you went home for Christmas, did you tell Gina then, or did you wait until you got the letter?
Did I tell Gina then? Oh no, I told Gina later. I mean, my sister and I are very, very close. And so after the exam, I was like, the nurse was being weird and she doesn't have a good, I think something's going on. And right away I went to worse. And my sister's a little more positive. I'm like Chicken Little, like, oh, the sky is falling. My sister's always very zen. Even when we were kids, was always zen, very calm. And so she's very much like, let's wait and see. Don't jump to any conclusions. And so, no, I told her, I probably called her from the exam. I'm like, oh my God, I think odd, So yeah, she was the first person to know.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Very first.
Yeah, Gina, for those of you who don't know Gina, I run down the hill. I'm like, I think my husband has shingles. And she's like, Justine, it's hives. I'm like, oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, because, and also with her too, and my dad was a physician. So we come from a family of physicians. And so I would do that to my dad too when I was younger. I would say, oh my goodness, I think I have bronchitis. And I do it to my sister still. Like, she's like, it's a cold and calm down. And so I always know. So yeah, she was the first person I called. She knew that I was, and in fact, I almost it was before Christmas and I wanted to do my Christmas, I almost blew the appointment off. But she's like, you should, why are you blowing it off? You got a free breast, you should go. So I'm glad I didn't blow it off as well. She was the person who was like, oh, what else are you doing?
Yeah. Get your mammograms. All right, we plugged it. Good.
Mammogram.
So my next question was kind of emotionally what you went through, but you kind of said that when you first got the diagnosis, you were just in shock and couldn't really hear anything. So it was nice you had someone with you to kind of listen while you were kind of in this fight or flight state. So how about anything during treatment, or did you have any other emotional?
So during treatment, so the other scary thing is once I was diagnosed, and even though I was going to Ralph Lauren Center, I still didn't really have health insurance. And they were kind enough to connect me through a program. It was a small hospital in Harlem. So they were able to start the surgery, even though I didn't have health insurance. They were like, don't worry about it. So another fear factor was that I was afraid I was going to, at the end, get this enormous bill. Like somehow this is going to come back to me. What if insurance or Medicare, Medicaid doesn't go through? It's going to somehow come back to me. So I was terrified the whole time about that, even though everyone was very nice and calm, and we had patient advocates trying to connect me to an insurance program, which they did eventually do. But even before I had insurance cleared, Ralph Lauren Center had me already on a program. They already had surgeons and a program through, I believe it was St. Luke's at the time. It might not be St. Luke's. I have to go back and think about that. But anyway, they were able to sort of put me on a track, even though I didn't have the insurance yet. So I have nothing.
Did you feel you got?
Yes, I
You
got
got
treated.
good
Yes,
treatment?
I got really good treatment. Yes,
Great. Yay.
definitely. And I think that's
Now,
because
yeah.
sort of they navigated me, like I said, through the system. Like they put, once I was in touch with Ralph Lauren Center, they had a lot of resources. So I have nothing but great things to say about Ralph Lauren Center in Harlem. They even have Ralph Lauren furniture. I mean, everyone was great. The surgeons were great. And so that was my first introduction. And the patient I was in touch with, they connected me to a patient advocate who was always working and calling and making sure. And eventually they were able to hook me to a health insurance plan, a New York plan. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So that was a
Yay.
big
Oh,
fear
that's a good
because
thing.
in my head, even though they're like, it's going to be okay, I was like, oh my God, I was just thinking that this enormous bill, but they were going to say, if I did get insurance, they were going to say they wouldn't cover it. So that was another enormous fear factor, but everything worked out. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they can say, don't worry, but you're the one who's going to get the bill if it
Exactly.
doesn't.
So no,
Yeah.
it wasn't,
Yeah.
they
And
were, I think they're affiliated actually with Memorial Sloan Kettering, but then I went to St. Luke's for some other treatments, but I believe that Ralph Lauren Center is Sloan Kettering. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Another fabulous organization.
Another fabulous organization. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could go back in time and tell your former self, actually, when were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed in 2005. February of 2005.
2005.
I was diagnosed. So it's been
So if you could tell her,
years. I would tell her it's going to be okay. I would tell her that you have a great support system. You really find out who your friends are. So there were some friends who were great, and there were some friends who really couldn't deal. And that was a surprising thing to me. That was the most eye-opening thing to me. And I was sort of, and I would tell myself to slow down because I was so petrified. I was working as a trainer, but I was just taking, I was training, I was working, I was doing 5,000 things at once, almost manically, to numb myself because I couldn't sit still, basically, because when I did sit still, it was, overwhelming for me. So I was almost manically working and working and working and working and working, like, even more than ever. But New York sort of forces you to do that. So I would say, slow down. That's what I would tell myself. That you're going to be
that is
okay.
good advice.
You're in good hands. You're going to be okay. I prayed a lot. I pray all the time, but there was a point where, and I don't even consider myself a control freak. I think I am now, but because I was trying to almost muscle my way through. But I remember going to church, and people don't know this. I would just go to church even before my diagnosis. I'm not a regular church person, but sometimes New York is so crazy. There was this one church, Holy Cross, that I would go to. Sometimes I was still auditioning. Before auditions, I would go, and I would just sit in peace and pray because there's so much going on in New York. You're busy, and so I would just sort of duck in before an audition. And I was still auditioning too at the time. I was auditioning, and my auditions were going well because I was just so numb. Like I would go and think, oh, I'm going to get cut, and they'd say, oh, can you come for this call? I'm like, really? I don't even think I was really there in the room, but okay, because I just didn't care. I was just sort of grinding, So, but I would go in sometimes, and I remember praying that it would go away. Please, God, don't let this truth let it go away. But I remember one day just releasing it and saying, okay, if this is it, then let me be strong enough to get through it. Just let me be strong enough. And I didn't realize, and also I would say to myself, you are strong. I didn't realize how strong I was. I didn't know that, yeah, I would say I didn't know how strong I really was. I thought I would collapse, but I just kept, I don't know if grinding was a good thing to do, but I just had to get through. Like the only way was through.
Right.
There was no way I could stop it from coming. It was coming. So I just had to trust that I was going to get through. So I would say slow down and trust. You're going to be okay. That's what I would say.
And have a peaceful place if you're in
Have
New
a
York.
peaceful place.
Yeah.
Have a moment of silence somewhere, anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had your sister and you had a handful of really supportive friends, but were there any, and you had the Ralph Lauren Center and
Yeah.
Sloan Kettering, but was there any other group or something you want to mention that
Yes,
might
I
help? And
will.
also you said you were a trainer, so if there's any movement
So
practice you could.
movement wise, I did cardio because I sort of had to keep moving. I remember going to my doctor after my first surgery. I had 6 surgeries actually, because while I was waiting for my insurance to clear, there was a place I could go for radiation, but the hospital wasn't as reputable, so I was a little afraid. So I sort of waited, and then when I waited, they went in and checked again, and some more cancer cells had grown back. And I was lucky that at the time it hadn't traveled. It was totally contained in my breast, so it hadn't traveled yet to my lymph nodes. So it was sort of a timing thing. I was really pretty lucky. But I think that I'm sorry. Now I've talked so much, I can't remember.
No, it's okay. Actually, I have more questions now, but I was just going to say, was there anything else that was supportive for you? But I would also like to hear why you had
Yes.
6 surgeries, but we can get.
So I did. That's what I said. So my doctor, I remember going to him after my surgeries and saying, "Well, can I work out now?" Because there was a time when he was like, "No, you can't work out." And I remember him saying, "Well, you can." And I did weightlifting at the time. And I remember him saying, "Well, you can lift 3 pounds." I was like, 3 pounds? You might as well say, "Don't work out," you know? So I was just sort of mad at him. But I did yoga. And as a dancer, I'm used to movement. So I remember walking, I remember jogging on the I did pretty much a lot of stuff. I would even go and do a light jog before my radiation treatment, like to calm myself. I needed to keep moving. So I would almost go just so that I could sort of get the edge get the edge off and be calm. But another support I'll have to say that if I'm being very honest, I got into therapy for the first time because I literally thought my world was ending. And when I first went to the doctor, not knowing if they were going to insure me or not, she said, I literally was having a meltdown thinking, oh my God, still thinking a big bill was going to come. And she was like, do you want to see someone? And I said, yeah, so I think I would like to see someone. And so it sort of helped me to process all, and I never was really a therapy person before, but and even though people were so supportive, you still in the back of your head think that they don't understand, because some of my friends who were supportive, they were supportive, but some were a little narcissistic as if it was happening to them, like, oh my goodness, and they were telling people, and so that was a little weird to me too. It was like I wanted the attention, but I didn't want the attention, and so there was only one place I could go to vent and be totally honest with my positive and negative feelings, besides my sister, because she got a lot of my negative feelings too, and positive. But therapy, I went into therapy for a little bit. And my therapist was great. So I would say if you need that additional mental health help, I say get that as well. Or spiritual, or wherever you find your strength, I say do whatever you need to do. People suggested support groups but I wasn't quite ready to share my experience, even with other people who had it. I think that came later. And there were some people I didn't even really want to tell. It was like I wanted people to know, but I didn't want people to know because I didn't want people to feel sorry for me, or or make, like I said, some people did make it about them. So I didn't want that. I wanted to still go on as if I had been going on. So I don't know if that was denial. I don't know if that was self-preservation, but therapy helped.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to talk to someone who isn't in your life. Like you're not going to see
Yes.
someone who's totally neutral and just there for
Yes.
you. And yeah.
And I would be like, and I would think, I'm like, man, am I a mean person, or am I crazy? Or and she was like, no, but you have, she sort of validated my feelings, because I was having all kinds of crazy feelings. Like, is God punishing me? Or, you just think so many crazy things when you have a health issue, and, and you're trying to heal yourself. And so that was actually part of my healing as well.
Yeah. That's thank you for sharing that. I know it's
Yeah.
it's going to help a lot of people.
Because I'm like, well, you do what you need to do, because I feel like sometimes it's just part of your healing. And like I said, I wasn't quite, and maybe now I would be more open to it. And I've met other breast cancer survivors since then. But when I was in the moment, it was more my self-preservation. Like I didn't want to take anything in. Yeah, so I was afraid that somebody would, if I heard someone else's story, it might scare me more, or I don't know. It was like yeah. So I feel like I needed one person that I could just totally let have my totally honest feelings. But no,
Yeah. And I think that's important too.
yeah,
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 everyone's
whoever it is.
got
I
a
mean,
different,
yeah, because
yeah.
because sometimes you feel that other people don't understand you because and they were trying to be helpful, but sometimes maybe I just wasn't ready to take in. And sometimes I realized that too. I would tell myself it's okay to rely on people because I feel like I help other people and they help me, but sometimes it's hard to ask for help. So that was a hard thing to do because people say, "Oh, can I do this?" Oh no, I'm good, and I still do. Oh no, I'm good.
Yeah.
So.
It would be nice to have a hot meal, but that's okay. I'm good. Oh, thank you. So if you remember, or if you don't mind me asking, why did you need 6 surgeries?
Okay, so I first went in and I had surgeries. They found some, and then a few cells had escaped, like they were almost like crystals, and it's like in your breast tissue. It's almost like it's crystallized within the ducts. So ductal carcinoma. So the first surgery they went in, I guess they got in, and they were little tiny. They do another sort of like MRI, and they found another couple crystals. So they did that a few times. But then, like I said, I didn't have insurance. And so I waited a few months because I was waiting for radiation treatment. So at the time, I didn't need chemo, but I needed 7 weeks of radiation treatment. So then when I went back in after I waited a few months, it's like some cells had come back. And that time, since I did know how to read the screen, when the doctor called me in, I looked at the screen and I saw it right. I saw it because and I learned how to read my screenings. Like a mass looks more like a dark hole, like in space, and this was more like crystals, almost like little stars. They sort of line up, and it's different if they're scattered. It's fine, but usually when they line up, it's not usually a good sign. So I knew, and so then I had to go in and get another set of surgeries, and then after that, I had radiation treatment. I had 7 weeks of radiation treatment.
Did you have any problems stretching afterwards or
No, I
range?
did. I thought I would have limited range of motion, but I didn't really. I was okay, but maybe because I was sort of fit. But like I said, my doctor wouldn't let me lift weights for a while, so I was mad at him. So I did a lot of cardio. But and I've since worked with people who've had breast cancer and other cancers, so it was helpful for me. And also at the time, I didn't mention I was a volunteer for Make a Wish Foundation. So that helped too to see outside of myself too, that I was helping kids who had cancer, and I was doing that before I was diagnosed. So that was something that helped me get through as well. Seeing the families and seeing the kids, and I was like, is this, you see 5-year-olds who have really, some of them are terminal, some of them are not. So that was helpful for me to sort of, to see them in the hospitals and to know that they were fighters, that now I was a fighter too. So there's some strong kids out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's all the questions I have, unless there's anything else you want to say or
no,
that was great.
I feel like what I will say is I'm still always scared when I get my mammogram, but I encourage all women to get their mammogram. Or if and like I said, I didn't have any outward signs at all, so I was lucky that it was caught. I was lucky that it was early, and I was lucky that it wasn't an aggressive cancer. But I know that people do have more aggressive cancers. And I would say if you have any suspicion, I would say get regular checks, check yourself regularly, educate yourself about breast cancer and other cancers as well, if it runs in your family or not. I think that you should, especially for women and women's health care. And there are programs out there. So you'd be surprised. There are support groups out there. Wherever you need your strength, wherever you need your support, don't be afraid to ask for it. If it and I talk to other breast cancer survivors and people who are diagnosed. I think at the time when I was in it was harder for me, but there are people out there. I'd say connect to people, connect to positive people. Uh, there's a lot of things on the internet. I'd say, take that with a grain of salt. And everybody is different. You don't have, whatever your diagnosis, whatever your treatment is, whatever works for you, it's very individual. So don't let anyone. And also, it was empowering. And not having my sister, this was another thing. I remember when I was afraid, and I was like, well, what if I had to have chemo? And she said, even if they say you have to have chemo, you don't necessarily, you decide on whatever your treatment is. That's up to you. So to me, that was very empowering. But do educate yourself and do get checked.
Well, thank you, Kia. Again, thank you. And thank you for sharing. This will be posted all of October.